Mark Rogers TV, week 13 of our college football predictions. Listen up for those confidence picks, of course. We are 20-13 against the spread in our confidence picks this season. Match that up against some other folks out there. It's pretty darn good at 61% against the spread. In our 3 years of making confidence picks, we are 66-34. That's 66 out of 100. Do the math. It's 66% against the spread. Last week at 2-1, Bama let us down, a 23.5-point favorite against Mississippi State. We came through with UCLA, a 2.5-point favorite against Washington, and also took Oregon State to cover the plus 14 against Arizona State, and that worked out as well. Let's run down some garbage games, starting with consensus number 1, Alabama at home against Chattanooga. Game should not be played, especially in the third week of November. So let's run down the garbage games. Bama, 49-point favorite against Chattanooga, could win the game by 75 or 80 or 100 or whatever Nick Saban would deem appropriate. But Alabama's going to keep it closer than 49, let's say, 45-3. Take Chattanooga plus the 49 points. Again, if you've seen my predictions on here before, you know what I have to say about these type of games, especially in November. So let's throw these out there because we run through all the top 25 games. Florida State taking on Idaho. Jameis Winston in all sorts of hot water, and more information coming out by the minute. Florida State a 57-point favorite, and fortunately for the Seminoles, considering this distraction for this football team, they don't play anyone worth noting in the next few weeks, and even taking Florida in an ACC championship game into consideration, really, Florida State not playing anyone that can stay within 5 touchdowns of them in the next few weeks. Cover the spread against Idaho of 57 points. Ohio State and Indiana, Big Ten game here. Of course, the Buckeyes have to play it, so they're not scheduling a non-conference light foe right here. They have certainly a number of them in September. Indiana, a 34.5-point favorite. The Hoosiers typically put up big points against just about anybody they play, including Missouri and Michigan State this season, but blasted at Wisconsin last week, 51-3. The Buckeyes will blast Indiana, but the Hoosiers will find some offense in this game against a spotty Ohio State defense, maybe the fastest, most athletic defense in the Big Ten, but giving up points. So take Indiana plus the 34.5 as the Buckeyes win by almost 34.5 points. Okay, you've got Clemson and Citadel. Citadel plus the 40, take them. Tigers win the football game, of course. You also have South Carolina taking on Coastal Carolina. I'll take it easy on the Gamecocks here because they play a very difficult non-conference schedule, one of the toughest in college football this season, with North Carolina and with Clemson included there, and also Central Florida. Coastal Carolina keeps it somewhat close. Take the 34.5 against South Carolina. Gamecocks win easily. All right, let's get to the competitive football on Saturday. There are some extremely important games being played this weekend. We start with Oregon taking on Arizona, and the Ducks, lo and behold, control the Pac-12 once again. Stanford losing to USC gives it back to the Ducks in the North Division, and the Oregon Ducks, despite what some of their veteran players say about not being too motivated to play in the Rose Bowl, are headed in that direction. Oregon minus 20.5 against Arizona. The Ducks win it big and cover the points against the Wildcats. Stanford and Cal. No band on the field required in this one. Cal will get blasted by Stanford. The Golden Bears are one of the worst BCS teams out there, getting blasted by the week. And even though Stanford is very conservative on offense, they will find enough plays on offense and probably some turnovers on defense to blow out the Golden Bears. I know it's a rivalry game, and what they say about rivalry games is throw out the score. Well, we're going to throw out this score because it's going to be like Stanford 50-13. So, Stanford minus 32.5 against Cal. All right, finally, a competitive game with Michigan State taking on Northwestern in the Big Ten. The Wildcats have come tumbling down following 10-3 last season. Came into this season at 5-0. Was it 5-0? It was 4-0 non-conference, and then they lost 6 consecutive games in the Big Ten, some in a heartbreaking fashion. This one will be relatively close because Michigan State will play it close to the vest. Northwestern's at home. And they've had issues at the skill position players since almost beating Ohio State in week 1 of Big Ten play, and then they were decimated by injuries. Michigan State takes advantage of that. I know that they're a 7-point favorite, but the Spartans will cover, and that's a confidence pick. Mark it down, Michigan State minus 7 against Northwestern in Evanston. Fresno State taking on New Mexico, New Mexico plus the 32.5 against a Bulldog team looking to stay undefeated and get to a BCS Bowl game. So, of course, the Bulldogs are going to win this game, take New Mexico plus the 32.5 points. Wisconsin and Minnesota. We've got two 8-2 teams in the Big Ten, and this is, of course, a rivalry game for Paul Bunyan's Axe. Minnesota, 8-2. They've won 4 consecutive Big Ten games for the first time since 1973. Wisconsin is one of the most undervalued, underrated teams in America. They will whip up on Minnesota. We like what Minnesota's done this season. Jerry Kill, it's an outstanding story. He's motivated his football team. He's inspired them. He's brought in some top-line recruits for a program like Minnesota, and they're playing very well on defense. They're resourceful on offense, still don't have much of a passing game. Wisconsin's going to go in there and take care of business by about 20 points. Take the Badgers minus 16 against Minnesota is very interesting to see two 8-2 teams in the Big Ten, and one's at home as a 16-point underdog. Louisville, possibly the best team in the America Athletic Conference, but if Central Florida continues to hold serve and they're teeing it up against Rutgers right now, Louisville taking on Memphis, and the Cardinals are a 23.5 point favorite, and they will cover that game against the Tigers. All right, Kansas State and Oklahoma. If you look back at Kansas State's effort against some of the better teams in the Big 12, they have played very well. They've won 4 consecutive games. They gave Baylor their toughest game to date, 35-25. They took Oklahoma State to a 33-29 game. They led that one in the fourth quarter. The Wildcats are very solid on defense. They've been dismissed in this season because of some early losses, one in particular on opening night to, I believe, North Dakota. Kansas State's a 4.5 point favorite against Oklahoma, with Knight playing for the injured Blake Bell. So we like Oklahoma to cover the spread at 4.5 because we think this is going to be a tight football game. But Kansas State at home with the defense that they're playing, and they're not making mistakes on offense. Oklahoma is having all sorts of issues right now scoring against decent defensive play, and they're going to see it in Manhattan. Take Kansas State to win the football game, Oklahoma plus the 4.5 points. USC and Colorado and the Trojans, wow, showed us some life at the Coliseum last week. They are now 5-1 under Coach Ed Orgeron, and they will wipe out Colorado, even though the Buffs are much improved this season. Take USC on the road minus 22.5 against Colorado. Huge game here in the SEC for a BCS Bowl bid. Both of these teams are out of the championship running in the SEC Western Division, but you've got Texas A&M and LSU. Should be a very entertaining game in Baton Rouge. Johnny Manziel looking to win a second consecutive Heisman Trophy, putting up similar numbers to last year. And, of course, we know that they lost a heartbreaking game against Auburn, lost a close one to Alabama. LSU already has 3 losses. So the loser of this football game goes back into the bowl slotting to possibly a Cotton Bowl, Chick-fil-A Bowl, something like that, or one of the Florida Bowls against the Big Ten. We like Johnny Manziel to make some plays in the fourth quarter and defeat LSU, a very banged-up LSU team, a team that on defense has not been a vintage LSU defense this season, and they're going to have all sorts of issues with Johnny Manziel, even though the A&M Aggies will have issues themselves with Landry and Beckham on the outside and trying to contain the Tigers' offense. It is at LSU, but we like a confidence pick here. Take the Aggies plus the 4.5 points at LSU. Texas A&M also wins a football game. Enormous game in Oxford with Ole Miss hosting Mizzou. And the Tigers hold the SEC East as long as they can win out. And they've got a very difficult challenge with the Rebels. Mizzou, a 2.5 point favorite. It appears as though James Franklin will be back at quarterback for Missouri. The Tigers are only a botched field goal away from competing for a national championship. But again, they still hold the SEC East in their grasp. They will go to Ole Miss, and in a very, very entertaining football game, we like Missouri to win and barely cover the 2.5 points against the Rebels. Another huge game, Arizona State taking on UCLA at the Rose Bowl. The Bruins and the Sun Devils both in position to take on most likely Oregon of the Pac-12 North in the Pac-12 championship game. UCLA's won it the past 2 years. Arizona State is looking to hold off UCLA, and with a win would wrap up the South Division. Arizona State's defense is going to get the job done on this night. Expect an extremely close football game. It's difficult for us to pick against UCLA with Brett Hundley at quarterback, with Jim Mora coaching this team and doing an outstanding job. The Bruins at 8-2, only losing to two basically elite teams in Oregon and Stanford, but Arizona State wins this with defense. They've got an exceptional defense. Taylor Kelly at quarterback makes enough plays in the fourth quarter. Arizona State -2.5 over UCLA. And finally, we posted a video on Baylor and Oklahoma State. The Cowboys have made their way to 9-1, not on the strength of great offensive play, but it's more or less been the Oklahoma State defense, most notably in the biggest game of the season to date, last Saturday against Texas, winning 38-13. Ditto Baylor. The offense is getting all the headlines with 61 points per game, 685 yards per contest. Those would be all-time records if they hold. But Baylor's defense has been exceptional as well. And to date, against its most difficult opponent 2 weeks ago, the biggest game of the year up until Saturday, in defeating Oklahoma 41-12. The issues Oklahoma State has in this game is they've not been throwing the football like an Oklahoma State team that we're accustomed to seeing under Mike Gundy. This is not Brandon Weeden or Des Bryant or Justin Blackman, Kendall Hunter, those type of playmakers on offense. They're a pedestrian ground game, averaging just about 4 yards per carry, although they have 21 rushing touchdowns between their two main backs. And they're only completing 53% of their passes under Clint Shelf at quarterback, although he does present a running threat for Oklahoma State. Baylor's loaded on offense, even though they've got some injuries with Seastrunk and Tevin Reese, their top wide receiver, out. They will win this football game and cover the 9.5 points. We like Baylor winning 45-30. And we've got a conditional confidence pick bonus for you. Unranked Mississippi State taking on unranked Arkansas. The Bulldogs have never won in the state of Arkansas. They are just a 1.5 point favorite against the Hogs, and they're a much better football team. The condition is that their quarterback, Dak Prescott, was hurt against the Alabama Crimson Tide last week, did not play. Actually was hurt 2 weeks earlier, didn't play last week. Tyler Russell, the senior quarterback who threw 24 touchdowns last season, played against Alabama but missed the fourth quarter. They brought in the freshman, Damian Williams, who missed on 5 passes. He's a true freshman. Could be tough sledding with him at quarterback, although he's received all the first-team reps this week, and he did make 2 very nice throws that should have been caught, one for a touchdown against Alabama. So our conditional pick here, listen for a quarterback depth chart update leading up to kickoff, because we like if they've got Dak Prescott at quarterback, Mississippi State, or Tyler Russell, but most likely it's going to be Prescott, minus the 1 against Arkansas in Little Rock. Those are our picks. We would like to hear your picks, especially throw out the big games of the week, but anything you'd like to throw out there in regards to what we possibly missed here, let us know right here on Mark Rogers TV.